Hey, this is Reno Riggins, and you're live with Wolfie D.
Hey, this is Jimmy Street, host of the Live and in Color with Wolfie D podcast. Hear the life and times of professional wrestler Wolfie D. From his time in the territories with PG-13 to his time in WWE, ECW, WCW, TNA, and more. Nothing is off limits and nothing will be held back. Thanks again for tuning in. Here he is, Wolfie D.
Hey guys, welcome once again, Live and in Color with Wolfie D. And I feel so repetitive. I do this all the time. It's me. It's Wolfie D, not the D-O-double-G. I just stole a little something from him. It's Jimmy across the street. And we're here. We're ready to talk today's gimmick is Reno Riggins. What a cool interview. I can't wait, man. I can't wait to talk to him.
I know, man. You know, I didn't know Reno so well, but I did know him for a little bit. I know you guys have a great history, so I just can't wait to. I got a funny thing I want to say. I've said it on the show before, but it's the famous Reno jacket story. So I think it'll be fun.
What are you up to?
Man, I've had my son for fall break, Tennessee schools. Awesome. Yeah. So I did a lot of driving in a lot of days. I went to watch my nephew play football.
Yeah. You did them old school miles, man.
Yeah, like the miles PG-13 used to do, that kind of stuff.
You did the loop.
Yeah, I did the loop. That's hilarious. But anyway, say hey, Cash.
Hi.
That's my boy. That's Cash Money Street.
His birthday, right?
Yeah, he's 16 years old, bro.
Yeah, awesome.
I know.
You got him driving yet?
A little bit, yeah, a little bit. He doesn't have the same drive for it that I did. As far as I wanted to be on the road at 14, and he's just like, yeah. I got a friend who drives. I'm cool,
brother. I drove for probably 5 years until I actually got a license.
Oh, well, there you go. Yeah.
USWA with no license after.
Dude, that's hilarious. I didn't know that. That's amazing. You are living the gimmick. You're totally a PG-13 member. Yeah.
All right.
Well, so what was it on Facebook? I saw something about your landlord. What was the deal with that?
Oh, no, my landlord's awesome. And, but we had a problem in like the upstairs bonus room, which is Isaiah's room. It has I think they call it like a moon light or something like that. It's like he's got a hole in his ceiling and a square hole, but it has a bubble plastic thing on top so you can see out. But it creates so much heat up there, like during the summer, and it's like opposite in the winter, and it's just like we had talked to the landlord about it, and he don't live here; he lives in South Carolina. Okay, so I come by and see the house a lot or anything. But anyway, he got the roof replaced, and we're getting those things filled in. So in order to do so, I had to, the roofers came by to observe, to observe the property they're fixing to work on. And they seen all the Halloween stuff out there. And they told the landlord, it looks awesome, but they're going to have to move it or we'll, probably break it. They have to use their yard with their trucks and blah, blah. So we had to take down all of that cool stuff that I just made.
Oh, man.
Now my garage looks like a haunted house, but they just got finished, and I get to put it all back out. But they're calling for hail tonight and thunderstorms. I'm like, nope, you're not beating my shit up. So I actually left the werewolf out there because he was close to the road and they wouldn't hit him. But when I saw it was coming, I'm like, nope, I'm bringing him in.
Yeah. So are they expecting Randy hail tonight, or is it just?
They're expecting Randy hail tonight. It won't be as round. It'll be more like little shards of, daggers,
Now, Wolfie D. Yeah, anyway, I got to work on my Randy Hales impersonation.
Yeah. That was bad.
It was. You're right. Yeah. Anyway, let's talk to your buddy Reno, man. I'm excited, dude. This guy has a million stories, and I'm excited to just get a couple of them. So.
Oh, yeah, man. I'm telling you. But he's an awesome human being. But then, seriously, man, some people, they only know him as one thing.
Right.
The probably one of the most successful, him and Barry Horowitz, two of the most successful, job guys. And as an insult, he made money and he wrestled some of the greats, man. So we'll come back here in a minute and we'll talk to him.
I love it. Let's do it. We'll be right back after these messages.
It's only a kick, a jump,
a block. It's only a serve. It's only a tackle. A run. It's only for the fans. After all, it's only pressure. You got this. Adidas.
Hey folks, to get your official Live It in Color with Wolfie D merchandise, go to ProWrestlingTees.com/Live Wolfie D. Check it out.
If you're listening to Live and in Color with Wolfie D on Apple Podcast and like what you're hearing, go ahead and leave a 5-star rating. And while you're at it, write a review. Tell us what you liked. Tell us what you'd like to hear in the future. It's very important to us and always appreciated. Thanks again.
All right, we're back. And as promised, I got an old-time friend coming on the show tonight. Reno Riggins, man. How are you?
I'm telling you, Wolfie, if it got any better, it'd be illegal.
You've always got it going on. You've always had it going on, man. You still got the garage thing or the car thing still going on?
Yeah. Here in Nashville, Tennessee, me and my family, we had this auto paint and body shop here for the last 47 years. So we're just hanging and banging every day at the body shop.
Hanging and banging, saying your prayers, eating your vitamins.
Yes.
That's it. Trying to, at least. We're trying to.
That's awesome, man. Reno, I'm trying to think, man, back to the day, man, when I met you. I mean, you remember I got in the business when I was 15, 16 years old, and I'm pretty sure you were one of the first people that I was had the opportunity to get in the ring with. George Weingroff, you, and so many other guys that had been down the road, and I was so thankful to be in there. Me and you have talked about this before. Me and you just had a chemistry in the ring, man, since day one, and I loved working with you, man.
Man, I appreciate that. And I tell you, I was talking to one of our mutual friends this evening, Jason James, and I was telling him about the story. And I'm gonna go into a deep story here real quick. Just right out of the gate. And it was a story of, I think you and I were working in Nashville at the fairgrounds together, and we kind of got thrown into a main event type of situation. At least that's what I can recall of it.
Yeah.
And we knew the main event wasn't there. And so I think you and I realized that we really had to pull off a tremendous match, or we just, kind of just went out there and got after it, it was basically just ourselves.
You're right. And
next thing you know, man, we tore the house down. And of course, in Nashville, a lot of, for folks that are around the country who've never ever got to visit the historic Nashville Fairgrounds Sports Arena, it was a situation where the good guys are on one side of the arena, the bad guys are on the other, and there was no communicating before the match,
right?
Or at least not any really detailed communication before the match. And so we were going out there and like old school, calling it on the fly.
Yeah.
And I think I was a heel, and Wolfie was the baby face, and I was, for me, at the end of the day, the bottom line was entertain the fans. They're the ones that paid the money. They're the ones that paid our salary, and let's make sure they go home satisfied and happy.
Yeah.
And I felt like that same night, Wolfie, felt the same way as well. And we went out there that night, and I mean, we absolutely jailed. Yeah. I mean, it was, and so we go out, we have the match, we tear it down, and a few days later, we would go and do like our interviews for the following week. We'd go over to the studio, Coleman Studios.
Yeah.
And Wolfie and I didn't get to speak after the match. So I don't see Wolfie for 2 or 3 days, and then we're at the studio doing interviews. And I'm sitting there talking to my old tag partner, Steve, and Wolfie walked in, And I remember this vividly. I jumped up and I gave him a big hug. And I told him, I asked him, I said, what did you think about that match the other night? Because me inside, I'm giddy. I mean, I am just bursting, And I'm hoping he is bursting too, because I'm hoping that we get to continue to work together. And Wolfie comes in and I said, Wolfie, how'd you feel about that match the other night? And he goes, man, and he felt the same way I did. Mm-hmm. And I told him right then and there, because at this point in my career, I'd been to WCW, I had been to WWE, and I had helped a lot of people further their career, and now I kind of feel like I'm trying to further my own at that point. Yeah. And I told Wolfie, I said, I have pretty much to this point in my career have wrestled, and it can be argued. But I told him, I said, at this point in my career, I feel like I have wrestled the Mount Rushmore of guys in our industry. Yeah. I've wrestled Ric Flair. I've wrestled Shawn Michaels. I've wrestled Bret Hart. I've wrestled beautiful Bobby Eaton. I've wrestled Owen Hart, Shawn Michaels, Randy Macho Man Savage, Rick Rude, and the list goes on and on. But I told him, I said, it's Kurt Hennig, just to keep throwing names out. Yeah. I said, but out of all those guys that I ever wrestled, I never felt what I felt Saturday night at the National Fairgrounds Sports Arena with you.
Damn.
And I wished we could had headlined a big pay-per-view somewhere, because I felt like, and this is, of course, maybe being braggadocious, and if so, then, forgive me, please. But I felt like, we wouldn't have took a back seat to Savage and Steamboat or any other great matches over the years that fans still tout to this day. I felt like we had it. And, and I feel like, looking back on it, I'm 55 years old now, but looking back on it, I feel like guys who try to, continue their careers with a tag partner or something of that nature, what you need to do is you need to find somebody that you have that kind of chemistry with in the ring. Yeah. And that's your tag partner. That's your tag. That's the guy you're trying to go get in front of big time decision makers to further your career with. And, and it was a match that, I look and I see wrestlers out there today. And of course, I know they've sit back there and went over that match for the last 6 hours before they go out there and perform. And this was a match that, oh, hey, Wolfie, you're in the main event tonight against Reno. Oh, hey, Reno, you're in the main event tonight against Wolfie. Oh, okay. And that art
did it.
That art of the industry. I'm not around it today, so I can't speak intelligently about that aspect of it anymore. But for what we did back then, I'd put it against anybody. It was. Sometimes like sometimes when you get two singers together, or you get, two actors together to act out a scene. Yeah. Wolfie and I had that, and we didn't maybe necessarily know that up to that point, because Wolfie had tremendous success, up to that point, and I had a pretty decent career up to that point as well, and we got out there, and it just seemed like it was just so effortless. But everything that we did was just, the timing was there, the intuition was there, it was.
Yeah, it's just one of those things you can't explain it too much. It's just it's there, and there's some guys that you work with that I've had Road Dogg on not too long ago, and he asked me about Brad, and I worked Brad one time, and Brad's known to be like one of the best and whatnot, but me and Brad had in my mind, the way I describe it, a good match. All right. We had a good match. We didn't really talk about a lot. And then I'm sure anybody that watched it would say it was a good match. But I wanted more. I wanted to work Brad in like an angle, something that had meaning and stuff. But me and you were able to go out there that night and just go do it, man. And sometimes you click with people, sometimes you don't. But to further that, I mean, we had that match, but then we had so many more with you and Steve against me and Jamie for your other organization that you started, Main Event Wrestling. You've always had a hand in promoting shows and stuff like that. But it was awesome. We always had great stuff. I'll never forget the time that me and Jamie went out there and put wigs on and put you guys' outfits on and did the little thing of, hey, let me tell you something. And
hey, let me tell you, Rusty. Let me tell you. For me, that was one of the whole highlights of when we did a little thing called Main Event Championship Wrestling here in Nashville, Tennessee at the fairgrounds. Yeah. And people who are wrestling fans, and they might recognize me now just out of the blue somewhere, which is, that sometimes happens few and far between, but they will reference that. And my wife teases me about that all the time. She says, that was one of the best things y'all ever did. And I said, hey, I didn't have anything to do with it. I didn't know what they were going to do. They just went out there and did it. And I said, you know what, Steve was about half hot. And I told him, I said, hey, Steve, this is great entertainment. Let them run with it. Let them run, man. This is great.
This is hilarious, man. I love doing that.
Oh, my goodness. And that was, I mean, if anybody ever, I think, you know what, I think somebody posted that on YouTube not too long ago.
Yeah.
And if so, please look that up, because that was classic. That was gold.
And especially if you know you and you know him, like me and Jamie did, we were able to pull it off even better because we knew you so well. And we knew the things you said, and the things you did, and the way y'all acted, all that kind of stuff. It was hilarious. I would have to say, as far as WWEF, whatever, enhancement guys, man, you and Barry Horowitz were probably the top two guys. Is that fair?
Yeah. I mean, I'm gonna roll with that. I'm not gonna turn that down. Heck, I appreciate that. Yeah, sure enough. Yeah, heck, I was even better than I was. But I tell you what, this was the thing too. I was under a point with them. I was at one point where they didn't renew my agreement, and it's not that they didn't want me to come back, but I think they were in a change of the setup of their business,
right?
And so I was gonna miss a date with them, and they didn't seem like they were too excited, or not too in too big of a rush to have me at the next taping or whatever. And so a friend of mine called me from WCW and said, "Hey, would you like to come down here and do TV? They're interested in having you to come down." I said, "Well, sure. I've got these dates open. And I'm an equal opportunity and employee. So yeah, I'm ready to go."
Yeah.
And so anywhere that's paying me, and of course I was doing a little bit better, a whole lot better at doing WWF and WCW programs than I were, a lot of independents at the time.
Right.
And so I mean, of course, at the end of the day, the bottom line was, it's a business. And I've always kind of kept that. I've always kind of kept that mentality about me, but also too, maybe sometimes that hurt me too, moving forward. But anyway, so I go down to WCW and they said, "Hey, we hear you're a pretty decent worker. We've got you on the second tape with Ric Flair."
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, "Brother, okay, let's see how good of a worker I am." And I never will forget, I was talking to the guy who kind of, put things together, was a guy named Jody Hamilton. Mm-hmm. Now, for maybe a lot of your listeners who don't know who Jody Hamilton was, Jody Hamilton spent his whole entire career under a mask.
The assassin.
and wrestled as the assassin. And when I was growing up, man, that's a tough dude right there, and he was a main eventer.
Yeah.
And so I get there, and I don't know who Jody Hamilton is. I know who the assassin is, but I don't know who Jody Hamilton. So he's talking to me, and I'm going, "Why do I know that voice? Why do I? I'm puzzled the whole entire night. Well, I didn't realize who he was until about 6 months after I've been working there. I'm Big Mark. And so anyway, so I'm going to go meet Ric Flair, right? Yeah. So Rick shows up, and he's Ric Flair, right? He gets there when he wants to get there,
right?
And so I'm all, I'm a nervous wreck. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm sitting there in my back of my mind going, whatever you do, don't screw up, because now is not a good time for it, right?
Yeah.
So he shows up, and they end up, coming to get me and saying, "Hey, we'll take you in here and introduce you to Flair." So I go in, and there he is, brother. 3-piece suit, Rolex watch, alligator shoes, Louis Vuitton luggage. I mean, it is what you see on TV.
Exactly.
And he goes, so they introduced me to him, and he goes, "Hey, sweetheart, I hear a lot of great things about you, and they're looking forward to working with you tonight, and I'll see you out there." And I was like, so I went from being an absolute total nervous wreck to now just being beside myself, thinking he knew my name, and he called me up, and he's heard good things about me.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking we're going to go out there and have a main event match. I didn't know, I'm like, but although though, after we had locked up, and like I said, he didn't even talk to me before the match. That was the only thing he said to me. So we're going to go out there and do, 12, 15 minutes of live television. And Wolfie can tell his audience, that right there is an absolute eternity when you're doing television, and I'm going out there, and I'm with the world champion, Rolex wearing, diamond ring wearing. I mean, he's the real deal, right? And so we go out there, and sure enough, we go out there and have a great match, and come back, and he looked at me, and he goes, "Brother, you got a big career ahead of you." And coming from Flair, I mean, what more do you want, right?
Yeah.
And so we had, went out there and had a great match, and worked with him one night, and the next night I had 2 or 3 different matches. So getting back to my point on all this was WWF at the time, they called me back, and I go do TV for them. And so one weekend, so all this airs on the same weekend. Mm-hmm. And back then you had WCW showing 2 shows on Saturday, 2 shows on Sunday. And because all this was syndication, it was all syndicated at the time. It wasn't Monday Night Raw. I mean, we're doing syndicated TV. So there was 9 hours of WWF and WCW television.
Yeah.
And I was on every program having a match. So for that one weekend, I was on TV more than Hogan, Flair, Savage, Steamboat, all those guys combined. I got more airtime than anybody.
That's amazing.
And you did a great job at it.
Oh, did Rick give you anything? Did he eat you up, or did he work with you?
No. Yeah, pull it up. Hey, we actually had a pretty good little match, and it's on YouTube if you pull up Ric Flair versus Reno Riggins or vice versa. And I mean, I get him in the corner, and I'm chopping him, I beel him, give him the beel out of the corner and the drop kick, and
the beel.
I mean, it was the big beel.
Does anybody use the term anymore? Isn't it funny, man? You're like me, man. You've been through a lot of generations of this. There's words that don't get used anymore. There's moves that don't get used anymore. Terms, things like that. Just for instance, the beel. Nobody calls that a beel anymore. It's a hip toss, and nobody even does that move out of the corner anymore. I mean,
I tell you, the first person I ever did that with, and learned the term from was George Weingroff. I've got him in the corner, and I've jumped up on the second rope, and I give him the 10 niggies, and I jump down, and he goes, "Bill." I go, "Bill who?" I don't know who Bill. I'm looking around like, who's Bill? Is Bill hitting the ring? I don't
Bill
know
Dundee?
what's going on, Oh, golly. Yeah, I thought, golly, here comes some guy hitting the ring named Bill. I got to fight him too.
That's funny. And even the term, we used to call it double knockout and then drop down. And it's flowed over now. It's just weird shit. It's like, why? What? The whole culture of the world is why do y'all want to keep changing shit? But at any rate, man, awesome, man. And I really want to look that match up and watch it.
We will. Yeah. One of the things back in the day, Reno, when we actually got a little chance to work together, I was managing Jeremiah Plunkett and Drew Haskins at the time as the Untouchables. And I never got the chance to really sit you down and talk to you, but both of those guys always said, you got to talk to him sometime, get in the questions. So now is my time. So I want to hear some Tojo stories, man. I want to hear some Tojo
brother.
I know,
Okay. This is one that I like to tell. Tojo, when I was trying to break into the business, I went to the Nashville Fairgrounds every Saturday night. And, back then it wasn't a very welcoming industry.
Yeah.
They tried to run you off.
Yeah.
And so I ended up asking, remember Sarah Lee? She was married to Corsica Joe.
Yep.
Remember her?
Yep.
So she felt sorry for me. She goes, this pitiful puppy dog. And she said, look, she goes, at the end of the night, go around back to the bad guy side. And she goes, wait for Tojo to come out and tell him that I sent you over there and that you want to be a pro wrestler. So sure enough, I go over there, I'm waiting outside and Tojo comes out and I'm following him to his car, and I guess he's getting ready to pull a knife on me, thinking I'm getting into, some goofy shenanigans. And he spun around, and it scared the absolute piss out of me. So I didn't say nothing to him. I hightailed it, right? And so I went back the next week. She said, "Did you talk to Tojo?" And I said, "No." She said, "No." She goes, "Go back there and tell him you want to be a wrestler." So next weekend he comes back out and headed to his car. And he was with managing at the time Akio Sato and Tarzan Goto. You remember them?
Yeah.
I remember.
And so he was with a couple of guys, and I said, Mr. Yamamoto. And he stopped and he turned around and I said, Miss Sarah Lee sent me to ask you if you would please train me to be a pro wrestler. And he looked at me for a second and he went, no. And he turned around and got in his car. And so I come back the next week, and she says, did you talk to him? I says, well, I did. I asked him to be a pro wrestler. And he said, no. She says, go do it again. She goes, go do it again. And so I go do it again, right? And kind of the same thing. And I said, Mr. Yamamoto, I want to be a pro wrestler. And he stopped for a second. He said, be here in the morning at 6:00. I said, okay. So the next morning, Sunday morning, 6:00, I'm at the Fairground Sports Arena, and he had about 4 or 5 guys that showed up on Sunday mornings to work out with him, and they were all trying to learn. One guy was a guy named Craig Brown out of Hendersonville, Tennessee. One guy was a guy named Major Yates out of Springfield. One guy was Kevin Ashebrunner from Adams, Tennessee. Mm-hmm. And the one guy was Sid Vicious.
Oh.
And I saw him and I went, oh my God. So I was probably in, I was young. I was probably in some of the best shape of my life. So he brings me into the building. They all get in the ring and start doing Hindu squats. He tells me, go grab the trash cans. There's 4 of them and put one in each corner. So I do that. And then he goes, run. And I ran the whole entire time that they were in the ring working out. I'd go up the steps, across the balcony, down the steps, across the floor, back up the I mean, you know the layout, Wolfie.
Yeah.
And I ran. And I got done. And he looked at me and he says, come back next week. And that was it. And I was like, holy crap. Here I am over, and the trash cans were for me to throw up in, which I did.
Right.
And so I come back the next week, and it's the same thing. And this goes on for about a month. But I was too stupid to realize he's trying to run me off. He's trying to do me a favor. And so by about the fourth or fifth week, Sid had left and has already started television in Memphis as Lord Humongous or something like that.
Right.
And so he brings, so I would get there, I'd set the trash cans up, and I'm conditioned now to just take off running. And he goes, no. You come in the ring today. And man, when he told me that, I was on cloud nine. I'm actually going to get that was going to be the first time I've been there for a month, and it's going to be the first time I've actually got to step in the ring,
Right.
And so, and I did, and then our training started, and I'm telling you, it was some of the hardest training I'd ever did in my life. I mean, he was legit, and so I trained with him for about a year and a half, not 2 months. And okay, hey, let's see if we can get you booked in Columbia, or let's see if we can get you booked over in Tulsa. I mean, if his name is on me, you better know what you're doing, right? So, and of course, everybody in Wolfie will tell you this too. Everybody that starts out in this business sucks. I mean, there's no guy who's ever been trained and went out there for their first match and you go, okay, that guy's ready for WrestleMania. It just doesn't happen. It is a 5, 6, for some guys, 7, 8 year process before they find out who they are in this industry. I mean, it's a work in progress. I mean, you're working on a 10-year Picasso. I mean, you're working on a 10-year piece of art, and you won't know until after the 10th year whether you like it or not, or whether it's good enough or not, or whether it needs to be changed or not. But that's just my thing. So finally, after a year and a half or so, he tells me, I think you're ready for a match. Okay.
Yeah.
So me and one of the other kids that was in the class, Major Yates, he said, he told Major, you're ready too. So we drove, he says, meet us here. He said, meet me here at the fairgrounds. So we met at the fairgrounds and he drove us to Columbia, Tennessee.
Oh,
on the way to, Mule Day, the big extravaganza. Nick Goulas is running the event, right? Let me tell you how hardcore Tojo was. Mm-hmm. He didn't smarten us up until we're driving to Columbia, Tennessee. He's driving. He had a maroon Lincoln. It had tinted windows. I mean, and it was the Mac Daddy of the day, of the era, right? And so we're heading to Columbia, Tennessee, and then he smartens us up, which you suspect. All right, we're doing this, we're doing that, but you don't know all the magic,
right?
And so he smartens us up. And he told us, he says, when you get in that locker room, you don't say nothing to nobody. You say, yes, sir, no, sir, and you keep your head down.
Yeah. And
that's what we did. We didn't know any better. We've never been in a wrestling locker room before. And that, Wolfie, when you first start, you're just trying to fit in. You're not wanting to cause trouble. You're not wanting to draw any attention to yourself. You're just trying to get through the night without pissing your pants. Right. And so this thing at the time was so low budget. Okay. So we're out on this great big field. It's almost like an athletic field, and they're doing tractor pulls at one end and mules are parading around the other end. But they've got a wrestling ring set up out in the middle of this big field, and the heels would come out of the baby faces would come out of the front part of this tent, and the heels would come out of the back part of the tent. And so we're all in the same tent, but we're going out in and out of different. I'm sitting there going, this don't look too high. This don't look too high class right here, right? So anyway, we go out there. We've got 10 minutes. So after Tojo smartens us up about halfway through the ride, he says, okay, this is what I want you to do. And he told us what he wanted us to do. He wanted us to do what we had learned in class. We're just doing basic wrestling moves. And he said, and like, I'm the heel, but Tojo said, at one point, I want you to take him and throw him out on the floor. or throw him out of the ring. Mm-hmm. And that's what I did. And Tojo got the heat, and I'm, and I never really did one thing that would be, because I was the heel and Major Yates was the babyface.
Yeah.
And I asked Tojo, I said, do you want me to be the good guy, or do you want him to be the bad guy? I don't know. I don't know what the termination, what the lingo was at the time. And he goes, no. He goes, you be the heel, he be the babyface. I said, okay. So I was just listening to him the whole entire time. And sure enough, we went out there and did exactly what he said and finished our match. And I think actually the match was Darnell, I rolled Darnell up with my feet on the rope, and that was it. And we go back into the locker room, and we don't know what we've done, but apparently we did better than everybody else that was on the card.
Wow.
And Tojo was he was so proud at the fact that we went out there and didn't screw up, because all we did was basic wrestling. I mean, the wrestling that folks see today on today's television, I mean, they would flip the channel in the first, 2 minutes compared to how wrestling was back. Wrestling back then, you actually grabbed a hold. Nobody grabs a hold. Nobody works a hold anymore. Nobody goes back to that hold anymore.
Grab a hold.
It's high spot after. What's that?
Say it, Wolfie.
Buddy Wayne, grab a Holt, HOLT.
Grab a Holt. Golly, yeah. And I mean, and that's what we did, and I think that was kind of the beginning of the transformation of wrestling from the 70s to the 80s to the 90s and then beyond and what you see today. Yeah. But, in the 60s and 70s, I mean, a guy might have a guy in a headlock for 45 minutes before they did anything,
I still enjoy going back like on YouTube and watching, I don't know if I want to say so much 70s because I'm an 80s kid, but 70s was good too. If you really, because the business, the art, and you watch it and see what they're doing. It's very entertaining to me. It might not be to the normal person, I guess, but there was a match, and I cannot remember, man, exactly who it was. I want to say like Blackjack Mulligan or somebody like that. It was him and somebody, and they worked a damn sleeper forever, man. And they kept he'd throw him out of the ring to get him off of him, and then he'd put the sleeper on the floor. I mean, the people were just so with it, man. And you, I know for sure, can relate to what I'm fixing to say is I've been in towns and been able to work Puerto Rico back in the early 90s and stuff like that, where the places where they still kind of believed, and that atmosphere, and I get cold chills saying it right now, that atmosphere, and when they still kind of believe, and you don't have to take the biggest bumps in the world to get a reaction, when you can dictate what they're doing. I swear it's giving me cold chills right now. When you can dictate everything, man, and have them pop for the least little shit is one of the best fucking feelings in the world. And we were talking about Ric Flair earlier, and I know I've told the listeners, and I told Jimmy, because we talked about me being at Ric Flair's last match, and I was a producer, also a talent on the show. And I went out there and I watched Ric Flair's last match, quote unquote. And I did so purposefully because I didn't want to sit in the back and watch it on the monitor. I went out into the crowd and I watched the match, and I don't care what anybody says. Dude, if you were in that building, Ric Flair did not have to do a fucking thing. His chops looked horrible. Everything he did looked bad, but the people fucking popped for everything he did. And I'm talking about his slow, methodical chops that did not look crisp like they used to. Nobody gave a fuck. Sure. It was Ric Flair, and he was telling his story out there. And dude, he might not have even made a smack when he hit him because he was hitting him so light, but the crowd went woo every time he did it. And so it's just that, that's what wrestling to me, with cable television, all that stuff. You're working, how educated were you before? They go, there's hard cams on this side, hard cam. Who gives a fuck about hard cam? When I first got out there, I'm looking to the people. I want them to react. to me, professional wrestling is a crowd interactive event, but that has changed.
Oh, it is. It is. Yes, you're exactly right. And if anybody thinks anything different, they're not. They have no idea what they're doing out there. I'll give you a great example. When I had 2 stints in Memphis, Dutch Mantell hired me in one, and Jerry Lawler hired me in the other. And my second stint, well, the Dutch and them hired me, and I was there for a week, and then WWF called me and said, "Hey, we need you full time." And of course, I said, "Dutch, as much as I love you, and as much as I love being here in Memphis and working on my craft, I got to go make some money."
Right.
And then the second time, Jerry, I was looking to try to. I'd been enhancement talent at WWF, and now I'm looking to try to find out who I am in this industry. Yeah. And so Jerry Lawler reached out to me and said, "Hey, would you be interested in coming to Memphis and working with Brian Christopher?"
Yeah.
And I said, I mean, for me, it was like a dream come true, because Brian was very, very young in his career.
Yeah.
I was still very young in my career, and I'm trying to get to that next plateau of, where I felt like I needed to be in my career at that point. And so I got there, and the first day that I'm there, I found out pretty quick, I don't like Brian Christopher. We're sitting back there in the back, and I'm going, "Who's this loudmouth punk?" I wanted to beat him up in the locker room first day I was there. And then, but Brian and I actually became pretty good friends through our business relationship, and it was, I'm there to work with Brian. And so Brian and I, we had a couple of matches just to kind of feel each other out, to see what he could do. And I'm sure he's sizing me up to see what I could do. And we realized pretty quick that, you know what, we've got some pretty good chemistry here. And so Brian and I kind of was the, sometimes on cards, you have guys that are your curtain jerkers. And I say that not with any derogatory or ill malice in my heart. I mean, those are some of the most important guys on the whole entire card. They're going to set the tone for the rest of the night.
I was just
for those that are listening.
That sets the stage, man. That sets the stage for the whole night, man. Especially, I'm about to say a name that I'm really super not fond of him, but Mike Porter. He gave me some bookings early on and stuff like that. And I remember it was, and I'm saying this because on indie shows, especially, you go to these towns that haven't had wrestling in them forever, or maybe they have had wrestling and it's a bad taste in their mouth, whatever. So that first match is super important. And me, and I think it was Rick Reynolds that went out there, and we had a good match. And I come back, and I'll never forget, Mike Porter goes, "I was pleasantly surprised," as if I was supposed to be the shits before I went out there, because I was a 16-year-old kid that he probably wanted to put his finger in my butt or something. But, so, at any rate, at any rate, yes, the first match is curtain jerker. I've been that 100 bazillion times, man, and you work your way up from that, and it is a very important match.
Yeah, and so I mean. So Brian and I, we go out there and we're working, and we're kind of just filling each other out. And what can he do, or at least what do I trust him to do? What does he trust me to do? And I mean, so finally, I feel like we're starting to hit a groove. I mean, we've had about 6 or 7 matches under our belts, and I went to Brian one night. And I said, "Brian," I said, "I'm enjoying our matches." I says, "We work extremely hard out there." And Brian and I, and you know this too, Wolfie, there's always a match on the card that has to carry a bulk of the workload on the card.
Yeah.
And Brian would try to go an hour every night. They told us, try to go about 20 minutes. Brian, with his dad's, blessing, he and I would go about 45, 50 minutes some nights, and that way the main event match, whether it was Jerry Lawler and Bill Dundee, or Jerry Lawler and Dutch Mantell would only have to go about 12 or 15, and out the door they go. And so, at first I didn't quite understanding that, and then I thought, well, I'm here to get better anyway. So the longer we're out there, the better.
Yeah.
And so then finally one night, I go to Lawler, and I said, King, let me ask you a question. And there's a lot of people in our industry that have different opinions of Jerry Lawler, but I'm going to say this. I highly respect Jerry Lawler. During my time in Memphis, I highly respect his input. I think he's one of the smartest guys, one of the most creative guys in our entire industry.
Oh yeah.
And he always treated me fair and respectful. So, and I probably haven't talked to him in 30 years.
Yeah.
But I still feel that way about him. I was very, and so I said, King, let me ask you a question here. I said, you and Bill go out there, and I'm going to be as blunt as I possibly can. I says, you guys don't do near the stuff Brian and I do.
Mm-hmm.
But yet, I stand in the arena and I listen to the pop that you get, and I listen to the pop that Bill gets. And I says, and Brian and I, we don't come close to that. What are we doing wrong?
Mm-hmm.
And he just said, he goes, you're not doing anything wrong. He goes, you're just not over yet.
Yeah.
And just something that simple. And he goes, keep doing what you're doing. He goes, you are building what I was working on 20 years ago.
Right.
And he goes, at some point, you will get to this point, but you've got to put it in right now. You've got to build. He goes, you are building your legend right now.
Yeah.
And I just thought, man, this guy's got it figured out, He's,
dude,
and
I'll tell you, we had him on here. I actually had him come to my car lot that I was working at up here. The owner had a plane. I went and picked him up in Memphis last year. Flew down there, picked him up. He was like so impressed that Wolfie D flew down and picked him up in a private plane and shit. But man, Lawler is absolutely one of the best. People say Ric Flair, blah blah blah. Man, Jerry Lawler to me is better than Ric Flair. I said it, fight me, whatever. Ric Flair, I feel sacrilegious saying this, but I mean, pretty much you've seen one Ric Flair match, you kind of seen them all. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. You've seen one Jerry Lawler match, you have not seen them all, because he does something. He is a master of ring psychology, man, on the fly, blah, blah, blah. He is so good. And me and Jimmy have talked about this. We have a series called Top 10. We did Top 10 Best Punches. Both of our lists, Jerry Lawler was the number one puncher in the wrestling business. I mean, you cannot say about that dude, man. He's incredible.
Yeah. I was working him one time, and I had him in the corner, and I punched him, and he hit me in the side, and it made the biggest pop and sound. Yeah, and I looked after I'd hit him, I stopped and looked at my fist. I was like, did my fist just do
that? Yeah, he does. I've told Jimmy this. He did that thing where when you punch him, he slaps you in the side, and there's a huge, I don't know if it's called controversy or not, but it's stupid as fuck, is all these guys today, they throw the slap on every fucking move they do. I rivetingly told Jimmy, I said, we're going to see somebody do a spit spot and they're going to slap their leg when they spit. But they slap on everything. But Lawler, he doesn't slap on any of his offensive moves. No. He was the first one that would fucking slap you on your move to make your move get better. Yeah. And that's what I was always taught, was I'm out there to make my opponent look good. Yeah. I think there's been a separation in that, as the guys today, they're out there to make themselves look good and do not care what the other guy looks like or even his well-being, as we can tell by some of these good god awful moves that they're doing that almost kills each other. But you know, it's go out there and make your opponent look good, man. Let's take a quick time out and get a word from one of my dope-ass sponsors, and we'll be right back with more Live and in Color with Wolfie D. Hey folks, this is Wolfie D here, and if you are looking to buy or sell a home in Tennessee or Southern Kentucky, you're going to want to call my buddy, the rock star realtor, Benji Bowie. And you say, Wolfie, how do I get in touch with this rock star? Well, you can call him directly at 615-390-8216. You can go to his website, bowiehomes.com. That's B-U-I-E homes.com. Or you can email him at benbowie34@gmail.com. When you need a home, you need the Rockstar Realtor.
Benji is a member of Exit Realty's Garden Gate team in Gallatin, Tennessee.
Hey, it's Kaylee Cuoco for Priceline. Ready to go to your happy place for a happy price? Well, why didn't you say so? Just download the Priceline app right now and save up to 60% on hotels. So whether it's Cousin Kevin's Kazoo Concert in Kansas City, go Kevin, or Becky's Bachelorette Bash in Bermuda, you never have to miss a trip ever again. So download the Priceline app today. Your savings are waiting.
Go to your happy place for a happy price. Go to your happy price, Priceline.
With threats to our nation waiting around every corner, adaptability is more important than ever. When conditions change without notice, quick strategic thinking is crucial. And with obstacles consistently impending, determination is essential in overcoming them. It's this willingness, decisiveness, and resilience that sets Marines apart. With our fighting spirit, we don't just fight battles, we win them. Marines are the constant our nation counts on to fight the unknown. And through adaptable problem solving, we do just that. Learn more at marines.com.
Every day I'm hustling, every day I'm hustling, every day I'm hustling, every day I'm
Jade Roper, the Southern Closer, is here for you if you're looking to buy a home and need the best deal on a mortgage loan. Now, while Jade's heart and soul is helping that first-time home buyer, it doesn't matter if it's your first, second, or the dream home you've always wanted. She is there to help. Jade knows the area, the market, and she's invested in your community. She'd love to help you with all your home financing needs and will make it as easy as possible. All this makes her the official mortgage lender of the Live and in Color with Wolfie D podcast. Contact her today at 615-681-4282. Email at jroper@primeres.com or just visit thesouthern.closer.com. NMLS 1794506. Licensed in Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, and Tennessee. Powered by PRMI, NMLS 3094. PRMI is an equal housing lender.
I used to always, man, you might remember working with me or something where, especially a heat spot, I'm going to come up with something good for you to do to me that I can take a good bump for, or just a crazy spot or something like that that's going to start the heat. I go out there and I think about, okay, what can I do for myself? But I'm also at the same time, what can I do to make this motherfucker like he's going to kill me? You know?
Yeah. Yes. Oh golly, yeah. I remember once I was at WCW TV. I'm working with Bobby Eaton. And I know I'm the enhancement guy, and that's good, well, and fine. But if I'm going to be that guy, I want to be the best of it that I possibly can.
Exactly.
You know, I mean, I'm getting paid to do a job, and I'm getting paid very well, and I'm wanting to not only, you know, make the guy that I'm working with look like a $10 million, but you know, guess what? What is going to get around it? Hey, that Reno guy, he's pretty good. He's a pretty good little worker. You know, he's not. Yeah, he's
and
not
enjoyable to work with. Enjoyable to work with. That will get you so far. You know, hey, dude, I love working with Reno, man. He makes you look fucking like $1 million. Boom, boom, boom. You know, that's lost, man. That's lost.
Oh. Yeah. Everybody, I mean, it's a me. And my thing is, if I make that guy across the ring from me look like $10 million, how's that going to make me look? You know, it's going to, and there's a difference too between going out there and getting squashed and going out there and being a carpenter and showing the
C word.
Oh, I used the C word, didn't I?
Jimmy,
the C word on a
podcast. I cannot stand that fucking term because it is a compliment. And I've had it said to me before, you're a good hand, you're a carpenter, this and that, but fuck, I hate it, man.
Oh, yeah, no, as a matter of fact, I saw Tony Falk this weekend, and Tony used the word, that's what made me think of it.
C word.
So I'm one night, I'm down in WCW, and this right here, I thought at this point in my career, was probably one of the biggest compliments that I could have gotten. So I show up, I walk in, I put my gear down, and I'm getting ready to say hello to a couple folks and, just do what you do in the locker room. You just hang out or whatever. And Bobby Eaton comes to me. He goes, Reno, he goes, have they told you who you're working with tonight? And I said, no. I said, I don't believe they've posted anything yet. He goes, hold on 1 minute. He leaves, comes back, and he goes, you're working with me on the second hour. We're going to go about 12 minutes.
Oh, man.
And I knew right then and there that what I'm doing, is propelling me in the right direction of where I'm hoping to go.
Yeah.
And so, and then, a month or two later, I'm at the WWF, kind of the same thing. I walk in, sit my bag down. Kurt Hennig finds me. He goes, Reno, who you working with tonight? I said, I don't know. He goes, let me see if I can take care of that.
Yeah.
He comes back. He goes, you're working with me. And so guys that had some talent, I'd like to say, and there's a lot of guys in this. I mean, everybody is talented to some level, and their talent may be on the microphone. It might be by them looking like $12 million, their bodies, But the guys, what I like to lend myself to was guys that were athletically, could get in the ring and have look like a competitive wrestling match.
Right.
And those were the guys that I wanted to work with. And although I loved the Road Warriors, they were good friends of mine.
Yeah.
Although I loved them, I'm not going to have the same match with those guys as I'm going to have with Owen Hart.
Right.
I'm not going to have the same kind of match with Razor Ramon as I'm going to have with 1-2-3 Kid or Shawn Michaels or, Bret Hart or those types of guys. And so I found myself later on finding myself being in matches with guys that were maybe more along the athletic wrestling side of things and not, earthquake. And no disrespect. I don't mean any disrespect when I say, but it's a different type of match that you have to go out and perform in. It's a different type of match that you have to set up, and being able to go out and work with guys that were, Dynamite Kid, Randy Savage. Mm-hmm. Man, I loved working with guys like that because I knew it was going to be kind of in the art of wrestling that I was trained in.
Right.
I was trained to be a wrestler. And me not being, 6'5" and 300 pounds, I kind of realized at some point in my career, hey, this is what I'm going to be doing,
And you know what? That's the thing. Timing is everything. We know that. You were in the era of the Giants. And
yes, I was.
And unfortunately, and I'm not saying this obviously not to knock you or anything, but you're not the tallest dude in the world, and so
no.
You were always jacked. But shorter than God, all those guys back then. I even fucking 95 when me and Jamie went up and worked the Smoking Guns. I look at that now, and dude, I'm 6'1". I mean, and then I was probably 220, 225, but I looked like a midget. Compared to Bill Gunn and Bart Gunn, and were in the 80s when it was even worse.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, I'm glad you mentioned the Smoking Guns because I remember when they first got there, and Billy and Bart, and they put me and Horowitz with them for about a month,
Who's better?
So
who's better? Let's stop it, because I was going to ask this question because I mentioned Barry earlier. I know Barry, and you know Barry, and who's better, you or Barry?
Oh, me by far. I mean, golly, that's not even close. Although he calls himself Mr. Technical, I was Mr. Everything. You know, of course, you got Paul Orndorff, Mr. Wonderful. Barry's Mr. Technical. I was Mr. Could Do It All. So I think Mr. Could Do It All was over all of that.
I love that.
That's awesome.
I love that.
I can tell you, man, back when I was a kid, man, he was Stretcher Jack Hart in Memphis or whatever.
Oh, God. Hey, I remember that.
Yeah. And then I went to a WWF show at the Municipal, and that little spot where you can see everybody come through. You go down the little ramp, and you can see can't get down there, but you can see the back. And so he's coming back from the ring, and I'm like, I was smart Mark before there was a term. And I was like, hey, Stretcher Jack Hart. He turns around, he looks at me like, that's not my name, punk. That was his electric comeback. That's not my name, punk.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm going to tell you this story right here, Wolfie. I don't know if you've ever heard this one or not.
Yeah.
But this is the story how I got to the WWF. Okay. I was wrestling in all these little podunk places, Springfield, Columbia, Indiana, Kentucky, any place that would book you. You're trying to get your name out there, and you're going everywhere. It seemed like the other day I remember Reno Riggins on a card with Airwolf. I mean that right there doesn't seem too far long ago for me, but
it was.
So I was working at the shop with my dad that day, and I said, "Hey, WWF's coming to town. I want to leave a little early so I can go down there. I want to talk to Vince McMahon about getting a job." And I'd been wrestling probably for about a year on kind of the independent circuit at that point.
Yeah.
And he said, "Yeah, go knock you do whatever you're gonna do." My dad was never too excited about it up till when he saw me on TV. Then he got really excited about it. But so then, so I had been working at the shop all day, and I go home. I took a shower and I put on a coat and tie, because I don't know what it is about when people put on a coat and tie. They look official. Or at least they look authentic, right? I put on a coat and tie, and I walked to that back door that you just talked about the Municipal Auditorium here in Nashville, Tennessee. And I go to that back door, and I see all the wrestlers walking through there. So here I go. I'm just strutting myself on through there, and the guy stops me, and he says, "Can I help you?" And I go, "Yeah, I got an appointment with Vince McMahon about getting the job here." And he goes, and the guy runs me off. He goes, "No, kid, you ain't getting in here. You don't know what the hell you're doing, right?" So they run me off. And so I go back, and I'm sitting in my car, and I'm sitting in my truck, and I'm just mad as can be that, I got to know what he's talking about. Well, apparently we had a FedEx delivery to our shop that day. It was a little box. And I thought, okay. So I grabbed the box, and I already gotten the contents out of the box. And I thought, well, if I hold the box this way, it still looks like it's kind of sealed up. So I take the box and I go to a different door. And I get to the door, and I'm banging on the door, and this security guy comes. He goes, "Can I help you?" I said, "Yeah, I got a FedEx delivery for Vince McMahon." And the guy goes, "Well, give it to me and I'll give it to him." I go, No. He's got to sign for it. I got to see him get it. And the guy looks at me. Here I am in a suit and holding a box. And the guy goes, "Okay, come on in." So I go in there, and I ditch the box, and I'm looking for Vince McMahon, right? I mean, here I am. Here's the thing. Sometimes it's good to not know you're ignorant or stupid. You're just rolling with it, right? So I'm standing back there, and finally this guy comes up to me, and he says, "Can I help you, sir?" I said, "Yeah, I'm here to talk to Vince McMahon about getting a job." He goes, "Well, what do you do?" well, I was insulted. I go, I'm a wrestler, right? And so I'm hot. I done got hot, And so I'm looking at this guy and I said, I'm a wrestler. And he goes, really? He goes, well, how long have you been wrestling? I said, I've been wrestling 2 years, although I'd only been wrestling a year, Right. I said, I've been wrestling 2 years, He goes, well, who trained you? And I said, Tojo Yamamoto. Well, see, because the guy I could, kind of out of the corner of my eye, see security coming to usher me out, right? and so here comes security. And when I said Tojo Yamamoto, I could see the guy hold his hand up. He goes, really? He goes, well, Tojo and I used to be roommates in Canada back in the 60s.
Wow.
He goes,
so who was that
tell you
guy?
what, kid, Terry Garvin.
Oh,
okay. There you go.
He was the vice president. He was the vice president of Titan Sports at the time.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
So he goes, kid, can you be in Bristol, Tennessee tomorrow night? I said, yes, sir, I can. And so, bam, I go home. I'm as happy as can be. I'm packing my stuff up. And I told my mom, I said, I'm going to Bristol. I'm wrestling for WWF. Of course, she thought I've done lost my mind. She goes, you mean the wrestling company that's on TV? I said, yeah, that one. And so, bam, I get in the car and I call my best friend, Chip Carroll. And, of course, Chip, he didn't have a job. I said, hey, drive us to Bristol, And I said, are you in or not? He goes, yeah, I'm in. Let's go. So here we go. So we go to Bristol, Tennessee. And I wrestle at Viking Hall in Bristol, Tennessee. You've worked there before, right?
I don't know. That doesn't sound familiar. Maybe not.
You probably worked there for Smoky Mountain.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And so I get there, and they tell me, they said, okay, let me take you and introduce you to your opponent, or to the person you're going to be working with. And it is Ray Hernandez, Hercules Hernandez.
Oh,
right.
Yeah.
And so I'm probably about 225, and I'm feeling like I'm in pretty good shape. Yeah. And then this specimen walks in, and he walks in with Bobby the Brain Heenan. So 2 nights ago, I'm watching television on USA Prime, and here these guys are, and now here they are 2 feet in front of me. They're telling me I'm going to get in the ring with him. And let me tell you, he was the nicest guy in the world. Goes,
dude, I'll tell you, I loved WrestleMania 3, Hercules versus Billy Jack. It was one of my favorite matches as a child. I love that match.
Golly, yeah. Yes, sir. And I mean, he was a sweetheart of a guy. I mean, he was the real deal. And so, they're telling me what all we're going to do. You're going to go down, da. So I get out there, right? And I'm standing there in the middle of the ring. And I mean, it was the most people I'd ever been in front of in my whole entire life. Yeah. And I know Wolfie probably can testify to this. But when you first start wrestling, and if you're wearing wrestling trunks or a singlet or whatever you're wearing, you feel naked in front of everybody when you first start wrestling. I felt so naked. I'm wearing some trunks, and I just feel naked. And so all of a sudden, here he comes down the aisle. This was before you had music and all the big Jumbotron intros and stuff like that. But I mean, it was electric for that time. So he comes walking out from behind that curtain, and he's got these chains around his neck, and he's probably 6'3", 285, and there's not a gram of fat on his body. And his muscles and veins are just pumping, and the blood is going through his veins, and sweat's glistening off his body, and he's coming down there, foam's coming out of his mouth, and he's got Bobby the Brain Heenan by his side. And I thought, I have made the absolute biggest mistake of my life. And he gets in there, and let me tell you, I was scared to death. And we locked up. So I mean, I had no choice. I couldn't back out at this point, right? So I got to go through with it, right? So we lock up, and I mean, he proceeds to absolutely beat the living snot out of me. Yeah. I mean, he shot me in and gave me a clothesline. I mean, I played Division I college football, and I've never been hit that hard in my life. And so he hit me, and my head hit the canvas, and I'm seeing stars, and I'm goofy. And we get to the back, and I felt like I had been absolutely violated. I just felt, like I've made the biggest mistake of my life. So I'm sitting back there just shook, I am shook. And he comes up to me. He goes, "Brother, you okay?" I said, "Oh, yes, sir. I'm fine. And Bobby Healy comes up to me and he goes, "Kid, if you can take that kind of beating, they've got to hire you." and sure enough, so Terry Garvin came up. He goes, "Well, you survived that. Can you come to Winston-Salem tomorrow night?" And I was like, "Yes, sir. Yes, sir." Although at that point, I wanted to just get in the car and drive all the way home and said, "Heck with this," And
isn't it funny, man, how we go out there and we literally, I've been in matches the same way where I just felt like, God, I've been in easier street fights. And then you come back to the back and you shake the guy's hand and thank him for beating the fuck out of him.
Yeah. I'm thanking this guy's hand for just giving me a concussion.
Hey, man, I really appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much for not decapitating me while I'm out there. Oh, my God. You're exactly right, Wolfie. That is the craziest thing. We are absolutely, at the end of our lives on our tombstones, and needs to read, should have been checked for mental disarrangement or mental disorders or whatever.
Think about it. Should we be called tough or should we be called crazy?
There's a fine line between the two. And so the next night I go to Winston-Salem. I wrestle a guy called Outlaw Ron Bass. He's 6'3", 330, big rough and tough Texan. And he was like an absolute feather. Yeah. I did not feel a thing. And as he's pinning me, he's pinning me, and he leans over and he says, "Welcome to the family." And bang. And next thing I know, I go back to the back. The guy says, "I'll send you a booking sheet in 2 weeks, and you're going to be on the road for the next 3 months."
That's
and
awesome.
I was like, brother. And so, then there I went from there. Well, so then I go to St. Louis. So the first place they booked me in was Springfield, Illinois. I fly into St. Louis. Okay. Now, if we're running on time,
there when I was a kid.
Yeah. So they fly me to St. Louis and they tell me to get a rent-a-car. I'm 20 years old. You got to be 25 to get a rental car, right? So I land there. I go to the I've never rented a car before in my life. I go to the rent-a-car counter. "Hey, I'm here to get a car." All right, let me see your driver's license. I give them the driver. "We can't rent you a car." Holy mackerel! My first day on the job, and I'm going to get fired. So I call the WWF office, 203-352-8606. I still know the number, right? And so I call them up, and I said, "Hey, they won't rent me a car. I'm a nervous wreck down here. What do I do? This. Unfortunately, I can't remember her name.
Miss Russo? Was Miss Russo there then?
No. Ann Russo.
Yeah.
Ann Russo was her name.
Yes.
Oh, my God,
Married to Dan Spivey now. When I was in Tampa a few years back. Yep. A few years back, I lived in Tampa for about a year. Me and Dan became good friends, and I had always dealt with Ann when I worked for WWF, and then I got to meet her. And like I said, they are married and live in Tampa, Florida. Yep.
Wow. She was absolute I never met her, never seen her. I only got to talk with her on the phone, and she was absolutely awesome. In my dealings with her, I loved her. Yeah. So she said, "Well, look," she said, "Go to gate 16. There's Ron Garvin and Terry Taylor going to be coming off." She goes, "Do you know them?" I says, "Ma'am, I've never met them before, but I do know who they are." She says, "Go to them, tell them who you are, and see if you can, ride to the building with them." Okay. So I said, "Yes, ma'am, I will." So I go. Ron Garvin's coming off the plane, right? he's coming off and stuff. And I said, "Hey, Mr. Garvin," and he's thinking I'm a fan. He thinks I'm a big mark, and I'm going to sign an autograph. He's going to sign me an autograph. And Terry Taylor, I said, "Mr. Taylor, Mr. Garvin," and I'm trying to proceed to tell them who I am. And they're like, "What do you want me to sign, kid? Hurry up. What is it?" And I said, "I need a ride." And they were looking at me like, "Go get a cab." I go, No. I'm on tonight's card with you guys. And then finally I convinced them, and they said, so Garvin looks at me and Taylor's looking at me, which I love both of those guys.
Yeah.
And they said, "Do you have a valid driver's license?" I said, "Yes, sir, I do." And Garvin looked at Taylor and he goes, "I found our next driver for the next 6 months." And so I drove them. I drove them from town to town. I mean, it was like for 3 or 4 months. I'm driving. I mean, that was the trio right there. I'm driving them around.
That's paying your dues.
Yeah, I'm paying my dues. And they're as soon as the town was over with, they've done popped open a 6-pack, and they're about 4 or 5 deep in it. And I'm just, I'm driving, hey, and I'm listening to them talk. And that's how I learned a lot of the wrestling business, what to do, what not to do, what to say, what not to say, who to hang around with, who not to hang around with.
Yeah. You know what, man? And I go back and I think about some of that stuff and some of the people that I rode with and hung out with. And we talked and stuff, but man, I was horrible at getting to know people and picking people's brains. I was terrible at that. And not that I couldn't have done it. It's just I didn't know to, and I was too busy having fun, if that makes sense. That's that's really what I was. Man, I could have done this business so much differently had I have had a little more mentoring, or had someone that, instead of saying, "Here, pussy, drink his beer," if I had somebody saying, "Hey, don't do that, man. Don't do that. And don't do this. And this is what you should do because you have talent." I wish I would have had that person in my career.
I think Ryan Garvin and Terry Taylor, they wanted a safe ride. So, so they were, they were drinking, but I wasn't allowed to.
Exactly.
The thing was, "Well, you're not old enough. We're not going to get in trouble for you." And I was like, "Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir." I was, but oh my goodness.
Let me ask you this, man. So I'm going to throw this in here too, because if I don't say stuff, I forget. So what was the name of that gimmick that you had, that hooded thing that was red, black, and yellow? What was the name of that?
Oh my goodness. Boy, you are just you're getting deep in the history book.
I got to follow up with this. What was the name for that thing? Do you remember?
The name was, if I can say it right, a friend of mine told me, because he spoke Japanese.
Yeah.
He said Hino Natenshi meant like inferno or something of that name.
Okay.
Hino Natenshi, and I said, let's throw a Lee on it, because there's got to be a Lee in there somewhere, right? and so that was the gimmick, and I tried to sell that idea to Vince and a few other companies at the time, but I couldn't get any takers on it. I thought it was a pretty neat little thing, though, myself.
Well, I liked it, and I've always, me, I love gimmicks, man. There would have been no PG-13. There would have been no slash. Anything I've ever done is a gimmick, because I love that shit. But I will tell you this, and here's a little fun fact. That gimmick that and Jimmy, I don't know if you've seen it or not, but he had a black bodysuit, and it had yellow and red fringe
and orange
fringe, like fire, like hair all over it and stuff, but in different places, but not all over it. But at any rate, when I came up with the Cyberpunks gimmick, that was a major influence, because I had, if you'll recall, Reno, and I know Jimmy knows what the gimmick looked like, but I had it was a black suit with yellow and red fringe on it. And that I kind of got that idea from your gimmick, so I did steal something from you.
Okay. I'm glad it inspired you. Because
I was in Mexico City, me and Jamie, and I drew those gimmicks up, Fire and Ice, and that was in my head. I really loved the way that that thing you had, Inferno. I loved the way it looked, and that was kind of a thought in my head as I was designing the cyberpunk outfit. So there's fun fact for everybody.
Yeah, little fun fact there.
A little fun fact.
Well, here's another fun fact. So you also taught me some things, Reno. So about a little over 10 years ago, you and I and Wolfie D were all working together in Millersville. Now, I had worked for Mike Porter because there's been so many different segues. First of all, I'm from really close to Bristol, Tennessee, Virginia. So Viking Hall was my first arena to see concerts and wrestling and all that. But we'll get past that. So then my next is we were all together back in the locker room at Saw, and I walked in there and I'd just been working for Mike Porter, and you had come from your Showtime All-Star, and now you were working at TJ's Southern All-Star, and I don't know the blend there, and we can talk about that another time. But when it came down to it, I saw on the back wall, I saw Bobby Eaton, who I had actually worked with a few times in Virginia, and I got to know him kind of well. And then you are sitting there, Reno, and then Wolfie. And I was like, holy crap, this is real. I've been working the $2 hot dog night in the middle of Gallatin Pike of Nashville, and now I'm working the big time. Look at all these dudes. I said, okay. So I knew Bobby. So I went to Bobby first because I knew Bobby's going to jump up and hug you if he knows you, you know. And Bobby jumps up and hugs me. And I remember Mike Cersei is sitting there, once again, rest in peace. And, you know, then you look at me and you see that Bobby had treated me with some kind of, and you kind of look at Wolfie, and Wolfie looks at you, and you guys make this, and you would never remember this, but you guys, okay, he can't be that bad.
Well, you know, I tell you what, if Bobby gives you the seal of approval, then you're good with me.
Yeah, right. And you could tell that in your faces. I tell that story a lot. Now, another story I tell about you, Reno, is this. So we all know in Showtime All-Star Wrestling, one of the greatest managers that you ever had was Paul Adams. Again, rest in peace. You know, we've lost so many great people. I'm managing Jeremiah and Drew Haskins, and I always wore colors with them. So if they were wearing red, I would wear red, like with my tie or with my shirt or whatever. It was hot. It was massively hot in Millersville, as everybody knows. It was It was probably in August. Yeah. And I am thinking, okay, Paul Adams didn't wear a jacket. Okay, it's really hot. I have a vest on. Okay, I'm in a suit.
I recall you telling me this, Jimmy.
Yeah, I have a suit on, but I'm going to take the jacket off. I'm going to act like I forgot it. Okay, and so we go out there. We do our thing. I'm wearing my suit without a jacket, got the vest, got the pants, all good, but the jacket was missing. So I come to the back, and I came to you, Reno, and I said, okay, what did you think? I did some kind of spot you told me to do. And you were like, I don't know. I couldn't see past the fact that you weren't wearing your freaking jacket. He
didn't say freaking.
No, he didn't say that.
He didn't say freaking. He said fucking, didn't he?
I'm just saying this. He cut a promo on me. And then what's funny is you brought that story up about you getting to WWF, snuck in with a jacket and a tie. And I'm like, oh man, this is a thing for Reno. This is a thing for Reno.
That's hilarious. Oh my goodness.
And I was thinking, man, I remember asking Jeremiah, I was like, man, Paul Adams is one of the best in the region. And he wears a shirt and a tie, but he was like, that's Paul Adams, man. You know,
yeah.
You know, Paul Adams already does that, you know.
I remember waking up one morning at my apartment in downtown Nashville to a passed out Paul Adams in my bathtub. That's my Paul Adams story. That's funny.
Was that one of the nights that we had wrestling down at Buffalo Billiards down on 2nd Avenue in Nashville?
You better believe it, because I lived on 5th.
Yeah. Okay. Let me ask you this: was there a guy named Billy West Nashville involved in that?
Billy Nashville. That sounds familiar. I cannot place it.
Okay.
I can't think of it. There's some characters. You employed some characters on your ring crew and things like that. There's a bunch of those we could talk about.
They're great guys. Though.
Hey, let me tell you this. I'm gonna tell you this real quick. So the other night, we had an event here in Nashville.
Yeah.
And I told you, Wolfie, earlier that I wouldn't touch upon it, but I'm gonna talk freely just for a minute. And I mean, we had a very successful event at the Troubadour Theater in Nashville, Tennessee. Awesome. Sold it out. I mean, it was kind of the Saul returns, and we had a lot of old familiar faces. Although over the years we've lost, quite a few friends and what I consider wrestling family members. We've lost Paul Adams. We lost TJ Weatherby, and we lost Mike Searcy, Dan Masters just last week.
Yeah.
And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention those guys. Yeah. And to start the event the other night, I took a white towel and I placed it on the top rope of the so when people walked in, if you didn't know, all right, there's a white towel. What does that mean?
Right.
But for those that knew, they knew what that white towel stood for and represented. Right.
That's nice, man. That's very nice.
I just didn't know another way, and I sent Paul's mother a note and I'd sent her because I took some photos of it. And when you and I get off the phone, I'll send you a couple of those photos.
Yeah.
But I had the white towel on the robe, and through the years with any business that you have or run, there's going to be disagreements. There's going to be discrepancies. There's going to be folks that are on the team still pulling in the same direction, although personally they just don't get along. And and I'll just tell you this, and I don't think it's no secret, and I don't say it to besmirch anybody, but Paul Adams didn't care for a couple of folks that were involved with the program, and that's fine. And probably the feeling was mutual,
right?
And I will say, so I'm out there letting the fans know about why the towel is out there and why, what that represented, and we love and miss Paul.
Yeah.
And Tim Thomason, who's a dear friend of mine, he came down to ringside and he says, "Can I have the microphone for a second?" I said, "Sure." And he wanted to recognize, TJ Weatherby, who was instrumental. TJ, and I'll kind of let the fans in on this, or if people that don't know in on this, that TJ had a building and was running wrestling in Millersville, Tennessee. Wasn't necessarily setting the woods on fire, and I wanted to do a television show. I says, well, maybe one hand can, wash the other if we can work together. Now, not that we always saw eye to eye or anything like that, but we knew if both of us were going to try to be successful, this is what we had to do. Yeah. So that's what we did.
Right.
And and Paul Adams and TJ Weatherby did not like each other, period.
Right.
Paul's a brash New Yorker. Yeah. TJ Weatherby, old Southern redneck kind of guy.
Right.
So they just did not mesh, right?
Yeah.
And Mike Searcy, do you remember Mike Searcy?
Yes, I do.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So Mike Searcy is a great guy in my book. And Paul, once again, brash New Yorker, clashed with a little bit, not as much. They actually, were okay with one another, but.
Yeah.
So so I'm out there, giving respect to Paul and letting the fans know why this towel is there and what he stood for and this, that, and the other. So Big Timmy comes down and says, "Can I have a microphone?" He goes, "We wouldn't be here tonight if it wasn't for TJ Weatherby If it wasn't for Mike Searcy, and I'm standing there and I'm going, oh, and I'll turn around and look behind me, and there's a graphic up on the Jumbotron, and it's a picture of TJ Weatherby, Mike Searcy, and Paul Adams. Three guys that could not stand to sit together in the same room. And I thought, what an absolute great rib this is for Paul Adams to be stuck on a graphic, with two guys that he didn't absolutely care about. Yeah. And I'm sure the feeling was mutual on some respect, And I just thought, how ironic life is at times,
Yeah. And just the wrestling business in general. That's classic.
Oh God, yeah. No, you're exactly right. The wrestling business in general is that way at times. Yeah. It is,
how many times have you worked with somebody, and I don't mean in the ring, I mean just in the business, that you just couldn't stand, or how many people have you been around you just couldn't stand, but you did business,
Sure. I tell you, one of the first lessons I learned from Tojo was you don't have to like somebody to do business with them.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm sure, over the years, Wolfie's been taught that as well. And pretty much any wrestler for the most part, if they hadn't been taught that, then they probably hadn't been properly trained.
Well, they don't teach that anymore, I don't think. There's a lot of things they don't teach anymore.
Seriously.
Oh, golly. I have, it's a whole different industry now than when you and I broke in.
Brother, you have no idea of, and Jimmy's heard this, and the people have heard this, but I'll tell you, man, when I went back and I did that Ric Flair thing as a talent and an agent, so I had a match that I wasn't in that involved a lot of young guys. This is a 4-way match, and Road Dogg even told me before I went to him, he goes, "They're not going to listen to you," not just because of me being me, just they don't listen, in general. And I gave them shit, and this one kid, and I'll say to Gresham, he got some heat for cussing out Tony Khan a couple months ago. And this was right after that, right? So I got his match. And this dude, he's jacked, but I swear to God, he's like 4 foot tall, man. I was like, what the fuck? And so then there's these other kids, and I give them all this shit. And I'm like, hey, going into the finish, you'll do whatever you want. Here's what I need for the finish, who I need to go over. But leading up to that, check this out. And I give them this big schmozz deal, and this dude, I said, what do you guys think? Do you guys like that? And all of them except him, they nodded their heads like, yeah. And then this guy, he's sitting there rubbing his hands together like fucking what's the guy on The Simpsons, Mr. fucking what's his name,
Mr. Burns.
Yes, he was rubbing his hands together. Yeah. And he goes, yeah, we'll take that into consideration. I was like, and I just said okay, and I walked away. And I went and told Brian, Road Dogg, and his brother Scotty. I said, "This is what he said." They just started laughing. So, it's totally different now, man. It's totally different. There's the respect factor. There is. I'm gonna tell you, you kind of get this feel if you. I don't know how much you keep up with what's going on now and stuff like that. I don't much. Because of this podcast, I have more, but there is a rift between the young guys and the older guys, and there never used to be that. There never used to be that. We always respected the guys that paved the way. Today's dudes do not. They do not.
Well, I wonder how that would have worked out if that guy would have told Steve Dahl that.
Yeah, exactly. But here's the thing, Reno. Here's the thing, man. Okay, so let's say this is 1992, and this guy tells me that, and I'd been in the business as long as I have now, okay, in 92, and this guy tells me that, I probably would have punched him in the face or something. So if I would have done that at that show, I'd have been blackballed and all over the internet. Wolfie D punches, sucker punches. You know what I'm saying? You can't beat people up in the ring no more. You can't. And not that I'm not going to sit here and say that that's a great thing that we used to hurt each other, but we taught lessons. And I think that boils over into just plain life these days. You're not allowed to teach a lesson to somebody or you go to jail. You know what I'm saying? Just the whole world is different, which makes the wrestling business different.
I tell you what I hate about today's society is that you might say something and offend somebody. But back then, when we were in the locker room, you said something that offended somebody and they didn't like it, you just smacked the taste right out of their mouth.
Exactly.
And then just go ahead and go home with that.
Right. You're not allowed to do that anymore, man. You're just not. And
no, you're not allowed to. You're not allowed to do that anymore.
That's kind of.
But I mean, but back then, that's how it was. I mean, I'm not saying anything to hurt anybody's feelings today because I wouldn't do that.
Right.
But back then, could you imagine walking in? Hey, Gypsy Joe. No, I'm not doing that. We're going to do this.
Right.
Well, you might end up with a baseball bat, just wrapped around your head and wear it for a hat on the way home. I mean, it just didn't work. It's a whole different world we live in now.
Oh, exactly. Exactly. Let me ask you this.
I can say unfortunately, but go ahead.
I wanted to ask you this. Where did it? Okay, I don't know if I want to say where or when, but okay. So your wrestling career, and then like in Nashville, you were prominent, man. Anytime you did anything, and I knew about it, I was like, I want to be on Reno show because I knew it wasn't going to be. And this is not a disrespect when I say this to a deceased person. It wasn't a Byrd show, and I knew that it was a Reno show, and I wanted to be on a Reno show. What made you? Like just want to do that part of it? What made you want to do it? And I will say this, every time you did it well. And I appreciated that. And you always had me be a part of it. And I appreciate that too. But where was the like they say light switch, light bulb, whatever. What happened that you said, you know what, I'm going to promote wrestling?
You know what? I tell you, I've here in the last, and one of our mutual good friends, Jason James, he and I had this conversation earlier today. So I tell you what, I'm glad you asked this question, and I'm going to try to give the most brutal and honest answer that I can.
I love it when it starts with brutal. It's going to be good.
Yeah, brutal and honest. I had... of course, when we all first start out in this industry, we're just trying to get booked on anything. And I had worked a few Mike Porter shows, and I'd worked some Byrd shows, and whoever else that was running, because the Jarretts wouldn't book me at the time, which I don't blame them. I was green behind the ears, and I didn't, know what was going on or anything like that. I'm just trying to learn. And why book that guy? I've got 100 other guys I can book that's far better. But so I started, running shows actually early in my career because I thought I could, just maybe break even or make $1 because nobody else would book me.
And were you? Correct me if I'm wrong. And this brings me back to the Inferno gimmick, but I think you and Dutch were kind of partners. When I first broke into business, y'all were doing y'all would go to a high school or a middle school and have a little show during during the day, and then come back that night and do the actual show at the school. You and him were kind of in cahoots on that, weren't you?
Yes. Dutch, and I love that. I love Dutch Mantell with unconditional love. He helped me so much in my career, just kind of understand who you are and where you might fit in this big picture, this big movie that is professional wrestling. And so we would do matinee wrestling shows at middle schools to help the athletic departments at these schools, because the middle schools, they don't get a lot of love. And so Dutch said, hey, look, if we go to these middle schools and tell them we can put on a wrestling show for them during 5th and 6th period of their school day during the day, and each kid pays $5 to get out of class,
right?
Then we might be able to pocket, $300 or $400 a piece,
Yeah.
And I'm listening to him because he's been around the block 1,000 times more than I had. And I was like, well, I'm in, And sure enough, that's what we did. That's exactly what we did. And we would go to Dixon County Dixon County Middle School. And I was the big heel. Dutch wasn't necessarily wrestling at that time. And I worked a lot of those shows with Ben Jordan. You remember Ben Jordan?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So me and Ben would kind of, give the kid. I mean, we would have like 3 matches, just 3 matches. And me and Ben go out there and tear it down for 30 minutes. And I was the heel, and I would, Ben would be getting the better of me. I'd get out of the ring, and I've had enough of this. I'm leaving. And then the doggone football coach would grab me and, run me back up to the ring and throw me back in. And those kids
classic stuff that you do when you go to a school. You have the head coach be the referee or some of those. I remember we did. I think I might have even been working for you on one of those when we did a deal where you blindfolded the wrestler per se against the coach. And I can't remember, but yes, those kind of classic things where you incorporate the school, incorporate the coaches, and get everybody involved. That was my point in bringing that up, because it's genius when you really think about it. Because he was right. You go in there during the day, the kids are going to pay to get out of class, and then they're going to want to come see what the payoff is later that night. And hey, let's bring mom, let's bring dad, let's bring cousin Johnny, and then you got a packed house for your show. It's brilliant.
Oh yeah, and we did a lot of those, and especially at Dixon County at middle school, because we helped raise some, pretty good amount of money for them. Me and Dutch did over the years, and like it was so successful that they called us back. And I think we did it for like 3 years in a row, and then they had the principal move on to another school, and of course, different administration comes in and things change, but that was a lot of fun. That was just a tremendous amount of fun.
Let me ask you this, because that was before, let's say, the Attitude Era and everything. Did you run into like any, the school system going, oh, no, not professional wrestling. No. We can't do that.
During that time, no.
Yeah.
Because like I said, it was before the Attitude Era. And, Vince, I was working for Vince and those guys. And I remember at one point, George the Animal Steele, who's one of the road agents.
Yeah.
He came into the locker room, and we were getting ready to go on air in about an hour. And he said, hey, Reno, come here. He says, we're getting ready to change our direction. And he said, and he told me this too. He said, we don't want to have any choking or any eye gouging or any nut shots or any of this, any of that, none of this, none of that. And I go, well, I'm a heel. What am I supposed to do? He goes, brother, I don't know, but figure it out. Because USA Cable Network was actually putting some heat on Vince and them about the content. Right. And I was like, well, I'm a heel. I pull hair, I choke, I gouge, I do this. I'm just like, well, what are we going to do?
Right. Reno, we can do this again. We can go on for hours.
Please, let's do it. I'm having a good time. I'm having a good time talking to you.
Yeah, man. I love it.
And
man.
Jimmy. And
we'll get you on for like a watch along or something. We'll watch one of our matches and comment on it and stuff. We do those.
Brother. Yeah, I'm in for that.
But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to say thank you once again to Reno for coming on. longtime friend, longtime mentor, just a great guy in general, man. I appreciate you coming on, Reno, come and talking to us. And I'm sure Jimmy feels the same way. But we're going to take a break, and we're going to come back. And Jimmy, your freaking favorite segment, Current Affairs, I'm sure is coming up. And am I right or wrong?
DJ, hit the music.
All right.
It's a current affair. It's a current affair. Love it in color. It's a current affair. Love it in color.
All right, we're back with Current Affairs. And one more time, not sponsored by anyone. And it can be sponsored by you. So don't forget us. Current Affairs. Anyway, so we got a couple current affairs here.
But it can be.
Yes, it can be. It's not, but it isn't.
Come on, somebody sponsor.
It's wide open at the moment. All right, so there's just a couple because I know we had an excellent conversation with Reno. We'll give a little sneak peek into this. Had your phone not died, we would have had even more with Reno.
My goodness, yes. And totally could have kept going. I mean, he wants to come back, so we'll figure something out on that. But there's so much history there, and I mean, but my phone put the kibosh on it.
It's all good. It's all good. So the funny thing is Reno, like he and Barry, I was thinking this as we were talking, he and Barry Horowitz and George South, those guys are like the A+ enhancement guys. Mike Jackson. Yes. Those Rocky King was kind of like that too. Yeah. You had the A+ enhancement guys, and then you had the, lower tier guys that really no name guys that you just kind of had to, you said you would even have to shoot with sometimes. So
yeah, exactly. And guys though, Reno, all the ones we said, people know that name,
Yeah,
and
totally.
Kind of the point that make money and let people know your name, I guess,
Yeah, and he was really good, man. He was really good.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's almost crazy because you think about somebody like a Tully Blanchard, okay? I always thought Reno. Now, Reno is actually at one time way more jacked than Tully, but what I mean is someone of similar height, someone of similar skill level, but at the same time, one guy had one thing. I guess maybe he's a second generation where Reno's not. Who knows? Right. But it's just kind of interesting to see how some guys make it and some guys don't. And it's like not anything to do with their talent or abilities, So
Timing, right place, right time, and somebody knows that you can do something that they need.
Yeah. Well, that leads into my very first current affairs is this. The other night on Monday Night Raw, our boy made a reappearance. And so they did the DX 25th anniversary. Of course, the whole team couldn't be there. Of course, rest in peace, China, Billy Gunn's in AEW, Ask Daddy or whatever he is. But with, you had Triple H, you had Shawn Michaels, you had Sean Waltman, and you had it's me, it's he, it's the ROADDOGG, our alumni. He was an alumni of the show. So it was really cool, man.
you botched that so bad doing his name. That was horrible. Yeah. You did it like I did on the interview. Oh, which one was worse?
It was that one, mine.
Yes, I know. And I have not seen it, man. I haven't watched it. I've seen stills of them all, in the middle of the ring and blah blah blah. So I haven't seen it, but I mean, and I've seen some reactions, some fans. When are they going to stop doing these guys? Blah, blah. It's just wrestling fans being wrestling fans. Some love it, some don't, and you got trolls and all that stuff. But I think overall, there's no way. Like I said, I didn't hear and see it. I only seen a still, so I couldn't tell you the reaction. But it had to be great. And some people just need to shut up.
Yeah, exactly.
I think if you hate wrestling so bad, quit watching it. Lord have mercy, quit torturing yourself.
Right. I mean, what is the joy out of it? Is the joy your pain? Is that what it is?
The joy for them is being a troll and getting the attention of that. It's like a little kid that needs attention. He'll do anything for it. He'll do anything for the attention, whether it's positive. If I can't get it positively, I'll get it negatively.
Right. Yeah. You're exactly right. No. Yeah, and but the cool thing is there was a scene where Triple H is saying, okay, and he's got them all in gorilla, it looks like, and he's all right, guys, we gotta get together on this, no cursing, no jokes about genitalia or anything like that. And Road Dogg says penis, we'll say penis, and that was hilarious. And then Shawn Michaels and then Sean Waltman say something, and then as they walk away, Triple H says something, and it was a total shot at AEW. He says, "Hey, no fighting." Yeah, it was a subtle jab, and I love those. But the biggest.
That just struck me. Sorry, I'm slow on that one.
Yeah. So the biggest, I think, news, and this will actually be our final current affair for the day, are a couple of amazing returns. One of them is the Good Brothers. They are back in WWE. So we've known this now that Triple H has hired all the guys back that he didn't want to fire, but Vince probably did. So he hired the Good Brothers back to come back and work with AJ Styles against Judgment Day, which I love that. I don't know Carl Anderson, but I'm a fan of Doc Gallows as a person.
Yeah. He's cool.
I'm happy. I know you know him, and I'm happy that he's back working for the WWE, because every time he gets fired, he always says, okay, that was my last run. And I love that he's getting another one. It's just, you like to see guys like that, I don't know.
Yeah, and it's funny because they have that brand, the Good Brothers.
I know,
elbow and all that kind of stuff, man. And that's what they say the boys back in the day and stuff, and I guess now kind of like he's one of the Good Brothers.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That's kind of he's one of the boys. He's old school. He's all the qualities that come with that, and I won't get into maybe some of what those are, but
right.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a good brother.
He's a good brother.
brother me.
Dude, he's got a character, Sex Ferguson, that if you just look him up on YouTube, y'all, I swear he's hilarious. He does this. He wears a Ribera jacket. He wears his
really?
Yeah, he wears his tights tucked in his cowboy boots.
An old school gimmick.
Yes, he's a total old school gimmick.
Is he doing what's his name? ECW. Steve Carino. Yeah. Yes.
All right. So Steve Carino's who you're talking about. It is kind of like that. It's a very element of old school, although he's doing it more in a comedic light, where Steve, I think, feels like he was 100% old school, which is cool. Did you ever work, Steve?
I think so. I'm not positive, man. If I did, it was not once or twice or something like that.
Sure. Yeah.
I remember, even up there, I worked so many of them up there, but we've talked about this. It was just Mikey and Spikey.
Yeah.
But I worked, I don't know if I've ever told this story, man. I worked Taz up there one night. Did I tell my Taz story? And I worked him in a singles match.
You told the story about Jamie or somebody putting sugar packets on your bag. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But you didn't tell anything about the match.
So. No, the match, hell, it was good, man.
Sure. I would love to see that. Yeah.
Yeah, I would too. But it was a house show. Yeah. And the only thing that would have it would be the ECW fan cam, and I'm sure it's out there, honestly.
Yeah, we'll have to find that. That's a big deal. Okay, well, speaking of other returns, and I know we got off on another topic there, but I like where it was going, so I didn't stop it. So Bray Wyatt returned at Extreme Rules. So, this has been kind of the worst kept secret in wrestling, is that Bray Wyatt was eventually going to return with all these lead-ins, and as some people were saying, if it wasn't him, I was going to riot and all this stuff. But
I was going to quit watching. Yeah,
I was going to quit watching because this was it for me. So, Bray comes out. He has his lantern up. He's got a new modified face, like a Joker-looking face.
You know what I thought of? And then the kid here, Isaiah, he was watching it, and his take was that the mask looked like the Black Phone.
It did.
And I thought it did, right?
Yeah.
Have you seen?
I have, and it did look like that. That's a great point.
I thought was, before he said that, I said, but you know what? I thought was that it looked like kind of like the Green Goblin.
Yes, it does. It does.
The lighting made differences in both of those things, but the shape of the face and the shape of the face on Blackfall was kind of like the Green Goblin, but
right.
Depending on how he wore it or whatever with the different pieces. But that's what I thought. I thought it was super cool. And that's, man, and I me and Isaiah had these conversations. I said, you know what? I said, man, you might be witnessing something. I said, because Undertaker's pretty much done. I said, if they stay with this and they do it right, and this is not like saying, like, knocking anybody. It's just, it has to be done perfectly like the Undertaker's career. But Bray Wyatt could be this generation's Undertaker.
Yeah, totally.
Because he's not there no more, right?
Right. He's not. Yeah.
If he comes back, he's going to do something. But there's your once in a lifetime creature feature. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If they do it right, he could be the Undertaker of this generation.
And I think that's what was so frustrating about his first run and then them letting him go, is because we see that. I agree totally that if done correctly, he could be this generation's Undertaker. He has all the necessities to have, and they just need to push him right and preserve him. And hopefully they, the funny thing is back when Undertaker was getting over, you kind of had that 100% booking, whereas now they have like a 50-50 booking where you want to make everybody winners sometimes. And it's just, to me, it's ridiculous because that's just too much. You don't ever get a guy over with 50-50 booking, in my opinion.
And I've seen some things too, man. And correct me if I'm wrong. I seen stuff where like people are starting to give professional wrestlers records, wins, losses. I don't think that should happen.
AEW does that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't think that should happen. I mean, because then that kind of takes away from so many things that are pro wrestling. I mean, I don't say that in words really, but that's not what it's about. Wins and losses.
Right.
Oh, come on. The babyface loses 75% of the time, but those 25% when they do win mean way much more. So it's just like, no, come on.
Yeah. So you're exactly right. If you think about it, they lose, and then they win in a cage match or they win in a payoff. If you book it in the way that I think it should be booked, you know. So then if you're leading that in, then your record's going to be 1-4.
Right. Exactly.
Ricky Steamboat's a 1-4. That just doesn't make sense.
225. That's not that good.
Yeah. So you don't want, I agree, but AEW wanted to make it have elements of the UFC brought in.
I know, and I hate that. We've talked about that. I fucking hate that. If I want to watch UFC and see people go out there and shoot and, do other stuff, I'm going to watch that. But if I want to watch people put some sauce on their moves and do cool stuff and tell me a story, I want to watch that. I hate that correlation that some of the guys have developed.
Yeah. Really. Yeah, I agree. I hate 50-50 booking. I don't like records. Goldberg having 100 million and 0 undefeated is a storyline. That's not a record.
Exactly. Yes, that was a storyline.
Yeah. So anyway, but I totally agree with you, man. And basically for that is our current affairs for the day, y'all. Like I said, I didn't want to keep it too long because I know we talked to Reno and we will have Reno back. But anyway, take us out, Wolfie D.
Hey, this is Wolfie D saying, thank you once again for listening to Live and in Color with Wolfie D with Jimmy across the street. And we had a great time at Reno Riggins. I hope you guys will continue to listen and continue to spread the word, share the page, share this podcast, however you need to share something. Just tell people about it.
Rate and review. Yeah.
Yeah. Rate and reviews, all that stuff that Jimmy knows about that I don't. Do what says. Do what Jimmy says and come back next week. We love you. Thank you. Goodbye.
And now a word from our sponsor.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling, the podcast that's based on the old school but can still help you find the good stuff from today. Jimmy Street and the Plastic Chic, Jared, are the undisputed tag team champions of the wrestling podcast world. From thought-provoking topics to to superstar interviews to action figure expertise. This team does it all. And all they ask is, give me back my pro wrestling. Every other Thursday, wherever you listen to podcasts.
This is The Big Picture, Michael Jablonski. Don't forget to tune in every week to Jablonski's Pissed Off on the Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling YouTube channel.
The thoughts wrong in this sport. He's gonna tell you all about it. He doesn't care what you think. You're gonna hear all about it. Mike Jablonski. He's so pissed off. Mike Jablonski. He's so pissed off. Mike Jablonski. He's so pissed off. He's pissed off.
In a world that has been completely divided for so long, two movie fans have decided to unite for the people and the betterment of mankind. One, an action movie buff. The other, a horror movie fanatic. Together, they will try to bridge the gap of both genres into one podcast with their battle cry, Give Me Back My Action and Horror Movies. Listen along as Charlie and Nate alternate each week talking about action and horror movies they cherish, mostly from the VHS era. Also, including some modern examples that felt like the movies they grew up with by answering the battle cry, Give Me Back My Action and Horror Movies. Available wherever you listen to podcasts. Look them up on Facebook and Instagram.
If you're a fan of rock and music, I'd really appreciate it if you took a moment to check out my podcast. It's called the Decibel Geek Podcast. We've been doing it for about 10 years now. We talk about Kiss. We talk about Ozzy. We talk about Motley Crue and Guns N' Roses and Metallica. We talk about all the legends from the 60s and on, up to brand new bands that you should be hearing about today that you're not going to hear on the radio. It's Decibel Geek. Wherever you find your podcasts, you'll find us there. If you love rock and roll, I can almost guarantee you're going to love my show.
If you're a pro wrestling fan, there's something for everyone at the Cheap Heat TV Podcast Network. From the Pro Wrestling Discussion Show, Cheap Heat TV Live, to the interview show, the Jackson Interaction Podcast with the king of all wrestling media, Gene Jackson, to the silliness of the Whitey Jenkins Show, and the brand new Zip, Xander's Irresistible Podcast with Charles Anders. You can check them all out and much more over at cheapheattvlive.com.
So that was another great episode. Hey, Wolfie, tell them where they can find you on social media.
Jimmy, they can find me in the club, bottle full of bub. I'm just kidding. They can find me on Facebook. My personal page is Warren Wolf, WOLFE. I'm on Instagram at WarrenWolf13.
You can always find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Live Wolfie D. And then on YouTube at Live and in Color with Wolfie D Podcast. Our website is anchor.fm/Wolfie D. Here's the thing. Wolfie always has offers for his autographed photos. He has a selection of some awesome photos from throughout his career that he will autograph and personalize any way that you want him to. Just contact him either directly at his personal Facebook page or through any one of our other pages, and we'll make sure you get in contact directly with Wolfie. Get those photos, right, Wolfie?
Yeah, I've got some good stuff on there, to help with the podcast.
Folks, if you can't get out to a show to meet Wolfie D, there's nothing like that, especially for the fans of PG-13 and Wolfie D. Also, do you have a product or business you'd like Wolfie D to talk about? Let us know about it by leaving a recorded message over at anchor.fm/Wolfie D/message. Leave your name and contact info and we'll get back to you. Once again, that's anchor.fm/Wolfie D/message. And before we go, you can always find me, your host, Jimmy Street, at James Rock Street on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube.
And hey, Jimmy, before we go real quick, I just want to add in there, from the bottom of my heart, I really appreciate, first of all, the work you've done for this podcast. You have worked your butt off. Secondly, the people that are liking the page. Beyond that, even more, is the people that are listening. And we really appreciate that.
Yeah, and remember, guys, the podcast drops a new episode every Monday at noon, and our past episodes are streaming now on demand on all major podcast formats. Thanks again.
I got a cap for your dome.
He got a cap for your dome.
I got a cap.
He for your dome. He got a cap for your dome. He got a cap for your dome.
And here we go, the original white boy that came out sagging, not bragging, don't be hating, cause I'm spitting the truth, still livin' in color, from rush your mother, utilize a hubcap, unlike any other. Back in the day, I was N-O-D, and I was P to the G, plus the 1 and the 3, in case you forgot, they call me Wolfie D, been cloned and copied so many times, tired of suckers taking credit for what is mine. You know who you are without me name dropping. Wrestling's first white boy coming out hip hop. Been doing it like this since '92. Laid low for a while and you thought I was through. Listen real close to these rhymes that I've injected. This shit's so sick it makes your ears get infected. Mad skills, no faking, there is no one great. Cause I'm bringing more folks than Obi-Wan or Vader. Not here to play games, so you better beware. You don't like me, so what? I really don't care. Like time I keep ticking and I can't be stopped. You sucker step to the side unless you wanna get dropped. With my finish, I'll straight knock you out. Please allow me to tell you what it's all about. I'm gonna wind it up, then I'm driving it home. It's Wolfie D, baby. Huh? I got a cap for your dome. I got a cap for your dome.
He got a cap for your dome. He got a cap for your dome.
This has been a James Rock Street production.